Hello and welcome to the Temple of Tomes with your host, Indie Comics Jones. Today is February 21st, 2022. This is episode 481, and I'm not going to try to take myself too serious today. Obviously, I'm doing handheld camera work on a PowerPoint presentation towards the end of February. So then we're going to take a look at the Tolkien Scholar and why I think this is probably a mythical person. All right. First of all, I did a lot of research on here. I was digging pretty deep. I thought I was actually going to find out what happened to the Philistines. I went so deep. But I had to back out because this is just taking too long and I'm not finding any real nuggets. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Feel free to pause this at any time during the presentation if you're looking at this on your PC, or maybe you can read it on your phone. I'm not sure, but there's going to be a lot of script text to look at here. So first of all, I started my deep dive into the Tolkien Scholar. I came across this blurb here from tolkienscholars.weebly.com, and it basically says these candidates must have an unweighted grade average above 90% or better. They must be enrolled in at least 3 honors level classes, and they must complete an extensive application process that demonstrates their aptitude to succeed as a Tolkien scholar. In rare cases, students may be able to apply at the end of their sophomore year. Well, I was thinking this was a college. It's not. As you can see, here's the blurb for this place. Enhancing the curriculum of Moeller High School's most gifted and highly motivated students. So then I proceeded to go ahead and look for, well, maybe there's some college degree courses or whatever. And I stumbled upon the Tolkien Studies on the web. This is Tolkien Studies blog, and I have the web address right there if you'd like to look it up yourself. There was no university that had major university that had any kind of Tolkien program. They did have courses on Tolkien, and a lot of the time these courses were with another subject involved with not just his writings. So that was a little disappointing to see. So far I kind of struck out on a couple things here. Now I did find one university, and we're going to go to that right now. It's called Signum University, and don't be alarmed if you've never heard of this before, but this was a college that was established in 2008, I believe. It was kind of like crowdfunded. They raised $23,000 to start this college. It is an online university, and it allows you to pick your own subject, I guess, to study. So here's what was right on their main page. I'm going to try to read this as best I can. Learn what you love. We're not here for chocolates, cards, and romance. What about the big 3? Philosophy, the love of wisdom; philology, the love of words; philomathy, the love of learning. A family takes Latin space courses together. A master's program student invited his mom to join him in the Germanic philology. Okay, so you can kind of see there that this is kind of going all over the place. This place is in New Hampshire. They are starting out, and it seems like their big push is to do some kind of Tolkien degree. But I don't think that this was really kind of... It's hard for me to really go much further. Hey, I want to mention at this time, please don't contact anybody I mentioned on this video. This is not a dog whistle. Just don't bother them. If anything, just kind of put these names that I'm going to bring up in the back of your mind, so you hear something from them, you can take it with a grain of salt. All right, that's the best I can say right here. Remember, please do not contact any of these players or people. Excuse me. So there you have Signum University. Let's move on to the next thing here. I did come across this, and this was very very, very interesting to me is Worm Talk and Slug Speak. It was written, it's kind of a blog that was written back in 2003, and it was on becoming a Tolkien scholar. And as you can see, he put Tolkien scholar in parentheses, not parentheses, in quotes. To me, that means it doesn't really exist. And I'll go ahead and read through some of this. I mean, there's a lot of text here. And this is the person that wrote this. His name is Michael, and we'll go through his bio in a little bit as well. I've been having a few conversations, emails and otherwise, about how one becomes a Tolkien scholar. So there is no, in 2003 at least, there was no formal scholar route to becoming a Tolkien scholar. So I thought I would blog about it, particularly because the whole topic raises issues of credentialing, etc., that I think we in academia should be addressing right now. And I wanted to point this out in blue. It is an interesting fact that many of the very best contemporary Tolkien scholars are not professors. And then he lists a few names here. Many of the scholars have academic affiliations at libraries, etc., but aren't professors of English or history or cultural studies, yet they are among the best. So this is back in 2003, this is being put out there. One big reason for this phenomenon is the Tolkien scholarship has not been an academically respected field. The only person I know who did a dissertation on Tolkien, this is 2003, and has an academic position and tenure is Verlin Flieger. Now, he probably doesn't know everybody in the world, obviously, that is involved with Tolkien or has studied Tolkien. So with academia rejecting Tolkien scholarship for whatever reason, the field was open for independent scholars to make a mark. So there you go. There you go. Just want to mention that I am one of the YouTube dorks that they'll talk about later. Of course, that is name calling, and that's kind of what people that are into this like to do, is name call. Okay, this is not to say that the independent scholars cannot make a mark in the field where there is a strong academic presence, just that it is, I think, much harder. Academics have a huge advantage over time and access over scholars who have to do a real job to pay the bills. So us out here in the private sector that are chipping away at these things, learning things on our own, if you've got a grant or a scholarship or whatever, your parents are paying your way through college and you have all this extra time on your hand, you don't have to worry about things like that. Yeah, you got a big advantage. That so many independent scholars have contributed to this field that is testament to both problems of academia and the brilliance of people who take the independent route. And that would include the YouTubers, Mr. Sam Thielman. Okay, now I highlighted this portion here too. I am, I think, less biased against independent scholars than many of my English colleagues because Anglo-Saxon studies have a long tradition of great independent scholars. Numismatics, that's kind of, I think, something to do with coins. Place names and local history are well populated with amateurs whom experts respect as knowing as much or more than the experts. This is a good thing. There you go. So, in answer to people who want to contribute to Tolkien scholarship but don't have a credential, just do it. Study medieval lit, World War I lit, Victorian and Edwardian lit, and most importantly, Tolkien's works themselves. Write up your own conclusions and send them to me at Tolkien Studies, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So I don't know if this website is still active as far as doing that. This was almost 20 years ago. Let's go to the next thing. And we get a picture of Michael here up here. You can see what he looked like in 2003. Okay, and here we go. We're going to his bio now. To add one more thing, I am a pretty big Tolkien geek. This is 2003, remember, way before geek culture really took off. I have read the history of Middle-earth, all 12 volumes, more than twice. I've read Lord of the Rings over 40 times, and the Silmarillion about 30 times. I've memorized a lot of the poetry. I understand the logic behind the alphabets. Now, I highlighted this portion, but I know for a fact there are a lot of people out there who know a lot more about the internal elements of Middle-earth than I do. These people are enormous resources for Tolkien scholarship, and they should be encouraged and listened to, not mocked or derided. There you go, Mr. Sam Thielman. I mean, I don't know how many times you've read The Lord of the Rings, but I'm guessing it's not very many. Okay, then he goes on to, in addition to my literary training, ancient languages, linguistics gives me an opportunity to add value and context to the analysis discovery by people. Okay, and here we go. I am a professor of English, director for the Center for the Study of Medieval at Wheaton College, Norton, Massachusetts, where I teach Old English, Anglo-Saxon, Middle English, medieval literature, fantasy, science fiction writing. I am also a Millicent C. McIntosh Fellow. My scholarship is focused on 10th century English literature and culture, meme-based theories of culture, and the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. So there you go. There is a pretty good description of what a Tolkien scholar should be if there was such a thing. And I don't think there really is, because I guess you could name yourself one if you like. Then we go on to Eric Mueller Harder. He has an ALB, BA cum laude from Harvard. He's the designer, developer, and author of the Tolkienists, the Tolkien Art Index, the LR Citations, the Tolkien Moot. His interests include the works of Tolkien, classical music, espresso, cartography. Now that's a good one. Linguistics, another good one. Keyboards for typing. I guess that's supposed to be funny. Macintosh, the Apple computer, not the Millicent C. McIntosh grant. Cider making with lowercase apples, I guess, and typography. Okay, and C, whatever. Okay. And we have this Luke Shelton, who is the writer. Okay, just talks about Eric's focus. The scholarly is mostly on cartography and map making, and this interest has led him to The Lord of the Rings. Well, what Eric Mueller Harder has also done is he has created the Tolkien website, the Tolkienist.org, and there's a picture of Eric there. And these are the things that he has worked on. Catalog, the Tolkien Art Index, the LR Citations, and the Tolkien Moot. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble stumbling over that. Now, the Art Index is just that. It's an index. It does not have images in it. He just did a lot of work of referencing things. And that's about it. He has this thing called the Vermont Softworks, where good things develop and all voices should be heard. Did you hear that, Sam Thielman? Okay, his Tolkienist.org website is kind of like a newsletter type thing. And we'll take a look. Here's Mr. Sam Thielman. Do not contact him in any way. Turns out this guy is a Daily Beast editor, and we'll talk about why that's important. He's worked on Comedy Central's President Show from 2017 to 18. He's also bearded and wears glasses like Eric Mueller Harder. And as you can see, he has recently written a opinion piece about the Rings of Power and the fans that are not happy with it. And the reason I say opinion piece is he comes out as a real shill, and also bows to the feet of Bezos. And I'm going to read this as best I can. I'll get in as close as you can. You may want to pause this. This is just 2 opening paragraphs in this. It's pretty easy to find. Just go to Tolkienist.org. It's the top article right now. Okay, I'm going to read what was showcased in red. Hopefully keep this camera pretty steady. It's tempting to dismiss the complaining as usual internet nerd rage. Similar disputes played out when the actors of color started taking a new major. Let me try that again. When actors of color started taking new major roles in Star Wars products. But the conflict is also about the rise of 2 kinds of media empire, not just one. There's Amazon, and this is where he just bows down and kisses the feet of Jeff Bezos, the crown jewel in the vast business empire of Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world. And then there's YouTube, a place for every dork, like myself, who likes to complain about pop culture and whose darker corners are frequent haunt of racism and bigotry. Now, okay, anybody that is one of these dorks that he's complaining about, these guys get canceled from YouTube, okay? You can say anything left and be fine, other than say you're going to commit some heinous act. But if you come out and just speak your mind of what you're thinking and what you've discovered, what is fact, and it doesn't go with the narrative, you're gone. Okay, so I brought up this about the Daily Beast just to show you what kind of organization the Daily Beast is. I went to Media Bias, a fact check, and this is what they've got the Daily Beast marked at. Not central, they're left. If they were any more extreme, they would probably be a publication taking place in China or Russia or some other communist or highly authoritative country. Their factual reporting, it's not very high. It's not high. It's not even mostly factual. It's mixed. Mixed. That could mean you could get the name right and where they were born, but then everything else could be wrong. They do have a left bias according to Media Bias, and you can just read that last part if you wish to pause now. I'm not going to read it out loud. Okay, let's move on. So there you know, there's our friend Sam Thielman. Worked on Comedy Central's President's Show. It's basically mocked Trump's, haha. So you know where his politics lie. All right. A little bias there. Pretty left. Okay, what I also found out about the Tolkienist is it's affiliated with the Tolkien Society. With Tolkien was the president in perpetuity. The vice president is Priscilla Tolkien, his only daughter. And the chair is Sean Gunnar. And they hang out in England and Wales. And you can see this Malorn is kind of the publication that comes out from the Tolkien Society. Now, I believe this is all kind of circular. The Tolkienists, the Tolkien Society, OneRing.net, I think they're all together. They're all together on this, just supporting the Amazon movement. As you can see, it's mostly white folk in there. So all voices heard, as long as they don't go into Gondolin, the Gondolin of Malorn here, and their own secret society. They want everybody else to suffer, I think. Okay. Then I took some excerpts from the Vanity Fair article as reported by Bounding in Comics. As we move along here, executive producer Lindsay Weber explain these casting changes within the Rings of Power. This you should say. This is what this whole thing says. It felt only natural that an adaptation of Tolkien's work would reflect what the world actually looks like. Whose world? Whose world are you talking about? Oh my god, that is like... Words escape me. She argued Tolkien is for everyone. His stories are about the fictional races, doing their best work when they leave their isolation of their own cultures and come together. This is her opinion. It's opinion. Okay, then Bound on the Comics goes on to talk about, they go on to try and deride the fans by citing a so-called Tolkien scholar named Mariana Rios Maldonado. Maldonado is not a Tolkien scholar, and we've kind of proven that there's no such thing as a Tolkien scholar as far as academia is concerned, but is rather a PhD student at the University of Glasgow, who is interested in ethics, feminist theory, and encountering the other in Tolkien's works. That sounds like a justice warrior if there ever was one. And the final point I have from this article is, if that didn't convince you, Maldonado also happens to be the Equality and Diversity Officer for the University of Glasgow's Center for Fantasy and the Fantastic. Now, I didn't dig into University of Glasgow to see what kind of Tolkien program they have, if any, but that's something that could be looked up. This just took so long just to get this far. Okay, so let's meet Miss Mariana Rios Maldonado. Now here it's from the Tolkienist. When you get there, she's number 37 of something. I don't know if that's Tolkien scholars or just personalities. I'm not sure. But there's an episode. For this episode, I had the opportunity, I think maybe an episode number. And this is by our Luke Shelton, our good friend Luke Shelton. She's talking with my good friend and brilliant Tolkien scholar, Mariana Rios Maldonado. Now, then they go through what Bounty and Comics has already said. She's a PhD student at University of Glasgow, where she studied ethics, feminist theory, and encountering the other in Tolkien's work. Okay, and she received a grant from Conejo, or whatever how you say it, Nacional de Ciencia y Tecnologías. Okay, yeah, so she is actually studied in Mexico first at the university. Okay, we'll get into that in a second. And now she is the Equity and Diversity Officer for the University of Glasgow's Center for Fantasy and Fantastic. So it's pretty evident here that she has an agenda. Now, she came from Mexico, and here is where she came from. It's called the Autonomous University of Zacatecas, and I apologize if I butchered that. It's a Mexican public research university based in the city of Zacatecas, in the Mexican state of Zacatecas, but with several campuses across the state, is considered the most prestigious and most important college in the state. According to Mexican business and economic newspaper El Economista, the UAZ is among the 20 best Mexican universities. Now, I don't even think I could name one Mexican university. I just don't know any. And I live really close to Mexico. I'm just across, like, less than 200 miles away. But yeah, so she is on on her way to get a PhD in Glasgow. So more power to her. Let's find out more about her. There's the graduate teaching assistant, postgraduate research student at University of Glasgow. The equity and diversity officer for the Center for Fantasy and Fantastic. And she completed her undergraduate studies in literature. Good. Spanish linguistics. Good. She should know Spanish, but and her master's degrees in comparative literature. Good. And that was in Berlin. She did that. Okay. She focuses on her influence of Germanic mythology. Good. Culture in contemporary literature. Good. Germanophonic fantastic literature between 18th and 20th centuries. Good. And J.R.R. Tolkien's literary production. Okay, all that sounds pretty good. And I'm liking that. But she's got research projects in ethics, femininity, and encounter with the other in J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle Earth. Funded by the Mexico, basically. So she's their big scholar, I guess. And just to tell you about this university that she attended in Mexico, the UAZ students and professors often engage in political and social activism, and its members have a long tradition in doing so. Because of this, UAZ has been an important figure in the state's policy-making decision since its foundation. So there you go. She's from an activist school. She's an activist. She's pushing her agenda down all of our throats. And before you know it, you know what happens. You get the sequel Star Wars. Just want to put out there that also there at Glasgow is Dimitra Fimi, and she's a senior lecturer in fantasy and children's literature. Okay? And I found this kind of important because she talks about some of her writings, Tolkien, race, and cultural history, from fairies to hobbits. Okay. Mythopoeic scholarship she was awarded. She's got a lot of niche awards and scholarships here, but she's even going into Celtic myth and contemporary children's fantasy. Idealization, identity, ideology. And you got those words in there too. And goes on and on about talking about the construction of Celtic identities in contemporary fantasy novels for younger readers. So she's got an agenda as well. So please do not contact any of these people. This is not a dogwood. I really don't want you. Just if you ever hear anything, you can kind of pigeonhole any of these names I've brought up and take a look at them. If you hear something from them, then you know to take them with a grain of salt. That includes Fimi, Maldonado, Thielman, and to a lesser extent, Mueller, Harder, and Luke Skelton. All right, so thank you for stopping by and sitting through this tedious, I'm sure it was tedious. Well, maybe it blew your mind. I hope it did, because it was blowing my mind when I was finding all this stuff. Video of the Tolkien scholars. We'll see you next time at the Temple of Tomes. Please like if you haven't. Please, you can dislike if you haven't. I don't care. Please leave comments if you wish, and please subscribe. Usually I do. Oof, I'm pretty regular about that. I am doing comic book reviews. It was a slow week, and this has been on my mind, so I wanted to jump out on this. So if you do come back, thank you very much for doing so. As always, please like, please subscribe, please leave comments. And this is Indie Comics Jones from the Temple of Tomes bidding you adieu.